Hey guys, this is Dinosaur Drawer, and this is the second part on how to draw Rodan from Godzilla King of the Monsters. So in this part I'm gonna try and focus more on doing the little details and a lot more shadow. So what I'm gonna try and do first is make the head a lot darker than it is right now. So I'm gonna zoom in so you guys can actually see what's going on a little better. So this line that we drew, just pull it back a little bit more, just a little bit, like that, and then just draw a lot of shadow underneath it, but make sure you don't go further down with the shadow than his eye, so you still kind of keep this highlight over there. And then this line is supposed to have a lot more shadow like this, and it actually goes further back like this. And with it we're gonna try and darken the underside of this horny this horn over here, this bit over there. Try and do the same thing over here. So yeah, I'm sorry if I'm using the wrong kind of words for some things, because my English is not the best, and I kind of noticed it later that I made a mistake. So please don't think too much of that. So over here as well, just darken in a lot of those darker areas until you get the right kind of shade that you want, that you need. So this beak thing, we can kind of make it a little bit darker, but not too dark. Just make sure that you keep some highlighted areas. Alright, and now for every single skill we're gonna cast a little bit of shadow on it as well. And especially on the under area of his body. Just gonna try and make it a little bit darker down there. Try and get the cast shadows on the set of skills that are actually underneath it. That way you create a very nice look in it. But we also need a lot of highlighted areas, like what we have on top of Rodan. So over here we have a lot of shadow going on. So we're gonna create a little bit of a cast shadow underneath every single skill. To create that very nice detailed look, but also it gets a little bit of depth into your drawing. And over here it gets a little less dark, but it still has those shadowed areas. And this line is actually supposed to go like this. I want to get a little bit more a shadow underneath his jaw. and get a little bit of a cast shadow going over there. And we have something like that over there. So now we can zoom back out again, and this is what it will look like when you're done. But we do want to have a little bit darker lines over here, because this still looks too pale and too white, too open still. So we're gonna try and make it look a little more detailed over there. Just to kind of match the detail that we have over here. Alright, this is starting to look quite good. Just trying to get a little bit more, just a tiny little bit shadow over here. Okay. Now we can actually get into his arm, which has the same kind of scale patterns, but it just goes around his whole arm this time. And of course it's gonna be a lot lighter on top of his arm than what it will be in the underside of his arm. And this will create a lot more detail as well. So yeah, you just put a lot of those rounded scales in there, and then you kind of change direction. Just go with the shape of the arm. And I'm not sure if you can clearly see that. I'm really sorry. I'm gonna zoom in a little bit. So yeah, this should be a little bit better. So you just go with the shape of his arm, and the more you approach the underarm, the straighter those scaly lines will kind of look to you. But it will still be very dark at some areas. For example, at these areas, what I'm kind of making darker right now, it's gonna be a lot darker, because those are the areas where there would be a natural kind of shadow. And I'm gonna erase this line because it's not accurate to the image that I'm using, because on the image the bone looks a lot less precise. It's a lot, yeah, it's just the shape is very strange and never the same. So this is more like the actual shape. And I am so sorry, sometimes you can't see what I'm doing because it's out of the camera shot. I still have to get used to the idea of zooming in. Alright, so we want to draw in the claws. Just put them in. And then get a lot of shadow in between those fingers. And a lot underneath them as well. And just get a couple of details in there, and that should be fine. Now you want to try and keep doing the same thing for this bony area as well, but make sure it's going to be very dark at the underside of it. And it does not have to be very detailed over here at all. So I'm just putting those scaly lines down very light, because like I said, it's not supposed to be that detailed at this area. And do be careful that you don't press down too hard, because this area is a lot smaller. So that means that when you're putting down darker lines, when you're putting down bigger lines, it will kind of look like there's a lot more shadow going on in that area, and especially if it's too small. So over here it needs to be a lot darker as well, so I'm just adjusting that slightly. It's not supposed to be precise at all. Just getting this line ready to get into the more detailed work. So over here what you want to do is do the same kind of scales, but in a very big scale. So they come from over here and they just almost looks like I said, it almost looks like they are feathers, and then they just keep on going until the end of the wing. And yeah, they really do resemble feathers in my opinion, because that's just the way that they look, just the look that they kind of project. And sometimes there are just random areas where you put down a couple of lines just to make it look more detailed or accurate, whatever you might want to call it. And right now it might look very light in comparison to the rest of the drawing, but I'm pretty sure that it will look a lot darker in the end. So what you basically want to do now is well, make sure you have an area where there is going to be a little bit of a highlight, and my highlight is going to be, let's say, over here. So what you want to do now is draw in a couple of lines that go in like that, because they do look like they are scales, and draw the lines that you drew a little darker at those areas. But you need to make sure that at the highlighted area you can't do too much of those lines, because you can't really see too much of it. So it's almost like there are some scales going on there, but still they do resemble feathers. And I'm gonna erase this area because I'm not happy with the way it looks. needs to be a little bit more random, and it's not random at all, that area. So I'm just gonna try and get it in more random. Just something that looks a little bit like this. So it's starting to come along quite nice this way. Yeah, I need to erase a lot of those areas because they don't look right. So yeah, you need to make sure that you do follow a certain pattern to kind of boost the realism a little bit. They do need to go by a certain pattern. You can't just put it everywhere you want. Try and follow a little bit of a pattern. Alright, and now what you want to do is get some shadow, so a little bit of a cast shadow down at those wrinkly lines like this. And make a couple of lines come from the wing itself, going back into well, kind of going this way, I guess. It's pretty hard to explain what I'm doing because I don't even completely know what I'm doing either. So it's just I'm trying to kind of get the right look, the way that it looks in the trailers and stuff. But I believe that the lines going in are supposed to be a little bit lighter. So I'm just gonna dab with my eraser so that I get about the right look like that. So I'm not gonna touch this again. I think that it looks pretty okay right now. So now let's get into the other area, the other wing as well. And after that we are about done. Alright, so for this there is a lot more shadow, a lot more actual shadow, so it's gonna be harder to see a lot of those lines. I'm just gonna try and create something like a lot of dark lines to make the whole image, make the whole wing look a lot more darker. So that I can kind of speed up the process. So because this is on the under side of his body, there's of course going to be a lot more shadow. So that's exactly what I'm doing now, trying and getting that shadow in correctly. So I can always go back in and refine it a little bit. So that a lot of those lines don't look too dark. Well, I don't mean too dark, but it needs to be a little bit more natural. So I can go back in and create a more natural look for it here and there. And there's not really much more that you can see of this wing because it's also further back into the distance. So it would look a little bit like this, but I do want to have a little bit more detail, so I'm just gonna draw in just a couple of those lines again and try and create a little more detail. To match the rest of the drawing, the detail of the rest of the drawing and stuff. And also get a couple of lines like this going in like this again. To kind of create the right amount of detail. So over here it's going to be a lot more darker. And over here as well. Just trying to create the right amount of shadow. Oh, and I accidentally went over one of his talons. We don't want to do that. And I want to have a little bit of shadow, a little bit of more shadow at this area as well. So that would be fine for the underside of his wing. Now we can draw in a little bit of detail on this area of his wing. Which doesn't have to be too detailed. And in my opinion it's a little bit too dark, so I want to highlight the highlighted areas a little bit better, going in with the eraser and making some areas a little lighter. So that it gets a little bit of a lighter look. In my opinion it was a little bit too dark. So underneath his fingers you get a lot of shadow, and as you can see, by the way, the underside of his wing is not as detailed as the other wing. We have a lot of shadow underneath his hand and underneath his fingers, and then it kind of goes like this. Goes into the wing. We can get the nails in as well. So, and then I would say that we are about done, but I still don't think this is right. This is way too dark. Way too dark. I'm just tapping on the dark areas with my eraser. Alright, and this looks a lot better. Now I'm just trying to get a little more shadow at this area. Alright. Just erasing the lines that we don't need anymore. The kind of guidelines that we drew in when we first started drawing this. Alright. And then I would say that this drawing is about done. So just putting in a name, I mean my autograph, the name, and then the year. Alright, so we are about done. I am pretty happy with the way that it turned out. And yeah, so if you liked the video, leave a like, comment below what you think about the video and the drawing in general, and don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you won't miss a single video. So this was Dinosaur Drawer, and goodbye.